Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We're going to move on with this week's theme of hip hop. Finishing out with our final track and artist this week, we're looking at someone named dälek. The track is called Classical Homicide, and let's get into it. This album art's interesting. The name of the group isn't, or the name of the artist is interesting. Let's see what they're bringing to the table. Interesting. I'm curious how much of this sound is going to be present when the vocals come in. They're very commanding. A lot of presence right here.
Subterraneans maintain old tongue amongst ruins and subdued tones that speak of the flesh, richer tunes are in the core.
Cut out the beat for this.
Talking travels to unmarked threshold, rapping juice untold line of whispers and figures.
Very unnerving.
Shattered splinters, melodic in their own arrest. Reminds me of Osiris, me lies looking sore. For 364 days I learned to call. Before my sense of urgency to resurrect the dead. Shed my last skin searching for angel with broken wing. Will she sing that E minor hymn? For those of us who sin, for those of us who sin. Will she sing that E minor hymn? For those of us who sin, for those of us who sin within. Dirty sanctum became brother's anthem. Jesus Christ, the black man walks the earth still. Forgot to speak the real. Slug his face, not still. I appeal to nil. Never one, not one, none. Vibrate ways to condense my thought. There's the dark, why question my heart? Vibrate ways to condense my thought. There's the dark, why question my heart? Vibrate ways to condense my thought. There's the dark, why question my heart? Vibrate ways to condense my thought. There's the dark, why question my heart?
We have instrumental breaks here. Yeah, the descent.
Every soul's flaw. I forever remain raw, unpolished, drunk of knowledge, and know when I'm done. Now remain unsung, but in the eye space numb. We all shall succumb to eternal sleep. But now I just yawn to speak on ill gutter beats. Watch falling leaves. Walk on knees, down gravel path, vocalize on epitaph, invoke on path towards inner non-linear, lay head monk sinner, solitude born winner, up all the visual surroundings, kept my bearings gone grounded, liquid language kept frozen 40 ounces.
So we get the underlying chord progression right here, isolated. Interesting variation on that final line. We'll get into that when we get into the lyrics, though. We started off this week checking out Kendrick Lamar, and I had mentioned in a quote that was multiple times put into the comment section out of context, I'm going to approach hip hop in the same vein as black metal. And the reason behind me saying that was that it's a genre that I have not had um, a lot of past experiences really enjoying the genre. There are elements of it that I dig, but as a whole, it's just not a genre that's ever really grabbed me. And I was going in with an open mind to explore what was being presented to me for this week. And I mentioned that because we had just got done listening to Black Metal Week. I don't think it was anything particular about black metal, just it happened to be the most recent genre that I had listened to that, I didn't really connect with. Um, but I really did not expect to finish out the week really making musical connections to black metal. What in the world? So, musically, right here, what we have is we have an underlying chord progression, which is a 2-bar vamp, jumps back and forth between two chords. The first bar has movement to it. The second bar is a whole note. It's just a single chord being held out. We also have a drum beat that goes along with this, and we have the noise component that I think is what I'm going to call it. It kind of sits right panned a little bit, and it's sort of brings about what would be the melodic role in a lot of songs, but kind of like black metal, it's really more focused on the fuzz than the notes that are created, right? And this fuzz is actually everywhere. There's a lot of compression put over the drumming. There's compression put over the chord section, the chordal underlying foundation. And even at the end, when we revisit the chorus, there is distortion put into the vocals. In fact, that final minute and a half of the track felt very black metal to me, in production at least. It was an intentionally lo-fi-ish sound that distorted and destroyed the core timbres of the instruments at play, in an effort to create a very specific atmosphere while also alluding to the idea of loudness. It sounds like almost every instrument is played to a point that the volume itself is beginning to clip, and we're getting this compression on top of it. We're actually destroying some of the audio with the illusion of volume. And it makes it sound like this part of the song is very loud, right? It's a very black metal thing to do, especially when we start looking at lower fi black metal. And yeah, closing out this week on hip hop, I really did not expect to say, yeah, this song reminded me of black metal's production, but it does, and I think it's done so to achieve the exact same vibes. Right? It's about being loud. It's about being huge, but also it's that same vibe that black metal has, where it feels large, but it also feels very compressed, right? And this is just part of the way that the compression is typically applied to a lot of lo-fi black metal. It doesn't utilize all the sound sphere. So you have this sound that feels like it should be loud, feels like it should be big and booming, but it's not. It feels very contained, right? And so it's almost this contained power, right? Putting a big shark in a small tank kind of vibe, right? They're gonna break out of it eventually, but right now it's holding, and that's kind of what I'm getting here in the final quarter of the song or whatever, is this concept of contained power. And it's interesting though to hear, even just the opening 45 seconds of this track before we got into the lyrics, into the vocals. We came in with the chord progression, and then we came in with the noise, and I think there was a third instrument sound. I can't remember what it was though. And then the drums didn't even come in until the fifth line, I think it was, of the lyrics. We allowed the lyrics to come in before the intensity and grooviness of the drums came in, right? So it started out with just the noise, just the compression and the music. And, that opening 45 seconds or so felt very, very metal to me, very rock. I suppose there's probably some electronic subgenres that I could be saying that it would probably fit more with based on timbre itself. But yeah, just a slow, subtle introduction into the timbres that are going to be present in the song. I think to me, it's a very rock thing to do. But again, like I say all the time, that's my experience. Classical also does it. Classical jazz has some songs that kind of ease into it. Every genre kind of has those songs, but given the heavy amount of distortion and compression put on the instruments, rock and metal are just kind of going to be where I gravitate to with that sound because they remind me of electric guitars, especially ones that are overdriven and distorted. And somebody had mentioned in the comments this week, I think it was on the clipping video, they said, you should check out dälek. It's a really good hip hop artist for metalheads, right? For people who typically listen to rock and metal. And I was like, that's cool, dälek's on the list. We're gonna get around to him, and I was excited to get into it. But I really wasn't expecting uh, that statement to be so true. Musically, this does feel like it will bring in metalheads uh, more so than all of the hip hop we've heard this week. Like, there's been some good stuff. I've really jammed with some of it. Little Sims was a standout to me. And yesterday's Aesop Rock, I think, had some nice elements to it. It had an electric guitar in there. But this one, I think, kind of matches the vibe and energy of some heavier metal in the musical aspect. And I think that might be enough to draw some people into it. Unfortunately for me, though, this kind of lines up with what we saw with, I think it was Clipping and also Kendrick Lamar, where the music is static, right? We do introduce layer by layer at the beginning, but once we bring the drums in the middle of verse 1, that's it. We hear a slight variation in the chorus. Verse 2 brings back the same ideas. And when we get back to the chorus, I think we do bring it back to the first the first chorus idea. But then we have that little musical interlude. And we have the humming on the left. And we have the fade out in the center. And then we bring it all back for the outro. The outro is just the opening all over again, just all at once, right? So there's really two things here, two musical ideas going on, and one of them dominates the song for like 80% of it. The other one is rarely used. And this is, like I've mentioned a couple of times through the week, this is my big hang up with hip hop, and it would be the hurdle that I need to get over to enjoy the more traditional side of the genre. Because I am a musical person, I do tend to listen to the music first, and if the music just doesn't change, like we see here, I have a real hard time, being grabbed by the song. It could be that I read the lyrics, and I'm like, man, lyrically this speaks to me, but I'm gonna have a hard time picking it back up and putting it back in the player for repeat listens because the music just doesn't grab me. And that's something that I talked about with Little Sims because of the dynamic element in the music. So there really isn't a lot for me to talk about here other than the fact that they really nail this oppressive vibe, right? They have all this distortion in here and compression, and it feels like a weight bearing down. Granted, it doesn't have the tremolo picking and constant 16th notes that we hear in black metal, but maybe it's just because after listening to all this black metal, I associate this style of super concentrated fuzz with oppressive sounds. But that's kind of the vibe I'm getting here. It's a very oppressive sound, right? All these instruments feel like they want to be louder, they want to be heard, they want to be wider, and the fuzz is just not, it's not really working for them, right? It makes the whole song sound tinier. But there's definitely volume here, right? There's power in the tininess. So let's dive into these lyrics and see what we can break out of this. We got verse 1. Subterranean maintain own tongue mongst ruins. In subdued tones I speak of the flesh which entombed our inner core. Who was blessed invade airwaves type Moore's wars. Well, I guess we're just going to follow the trend here, and as usual, I got nothing coming into this. I'm hoping that one of these lines, like we've seen in the past few days, is the key for me to kind of understand the theme. And once I have the theme, I can retroactively apply some of these metaphors to what I believe the song is about and get at, the core idea that's going on here. But yeah, like I said, as usual, 4 lines in, and I have no idea what we're talking about, which is not abnormal for this week. For those who are new to the channel, music is my home. I can sit here and tell you what's going on with music and what different musical ideas mean and why artists might have chosen to use specific sounds or composition techniques. When it comes to lyrics, I'm still learning, I'm still growing. Especially hip hop using a lot of references and metaphorical words, double entendres. Like it's a bit much for me to take in. It's not my forte. But we'll get there. We'll see what's going on here. If nothing else, you guys can hit me up in the comments and let me know what I missed, right? Because I'm still going to be interested in what the song's about. All right, line 5, verse 1. Soar from travels to unmarked thresholds, grapple truths untold, lying in whispers. It figures he who snickers doesn't see final melody. Shattered splinters melodic in their own unrest. So he says soar from travels to unmarked thresholds. Like he's moving to places and going past, so thresholds, lines in the sand, so to speak. Like he's breaking past moments of no turning back, kind of. So he's unmarked though, right? He doesn't know that he's past these moments, but he's done all this traveling. He says he grapples with truths untold, lying in whispers. It figures he who snickers doesn't see the final melody. I mean, yeah, if you're snickering, you can't hear the music around you, right? You have to be in tune with your environment, with what's going on around you to hear. But I'm not sure how that lines up with anything. Shattered splinters, melodic in their own unrest. Remind me of Osiris, made liars of us all. For 364 days, I learned to crawl. So for a year, it took him to learn how to crawl. Appalled by the sense of urgency to resurrect the dead, shed my last skin searching for angel with broken wings. Interestingly, so far, I haven't seen a real strong element of a rhyming scheme. This is something that I've pointed out in a lot of the past reactions about how we have both rhyme schemes that go from line to line, and then also interline rhyming, where we see rhyming within each line of the stanza, and how the artists, the rappers, can sort of manipulate the rhyming rhythm. Sometimes interline, sometimes rhyming against other lines, sometimes bringing rhymes back from lines prior. And here, I'm not really seeing a lot of it. If I remember correctly from the reaction itself, actually listening to the song, a lot of the flow going on here is rhythmic. What beats he chooses to emphasize and to accent, to put that little bit of extra grit onto. But it's interesting, at least to me, that there was so much lyrical flow going on, despite the fact that there's so little rhyming going on. It's an interesting way to go about it, and it's quite different from everything else I've seen this week. At least to me, it puts Dälek in a different area than the other rappers we've looked at. But going back to this idea of taking a year to learn to crawl, appalled by the sense of urgency to resurrect the dead, shed my last skin. I don't know what's going on here. Will she sing that E minor hymn for those of us who sin? Within dirty sanctum became brethren's anthem. Jesus Christ, the black man, walks the earth still. Forget to speak the real. Struggle's fate not sealed. I appeal to nil. Never one, not one, none. Yeah, I don't know here. I'm halfway through the song, and I ain't got. I don't have much of a grasp on what we're talking about yet, which is not a good sign. Usually I've got something by this point. But at least it looks like he says that, I don't know, he continues to do what he does even if it's not appealing. He says he forgot to speak. Wait, he says he never forgets to speak the real, right? So he always speaks what's real to him, what his truth that he thinks people need to hear, that he thinks he needs to speak. He says the struggle's fate is not sealed, continues to make this struggle despite the fact that he appeals to no one, never, to none. He admits that he doesn't have much of an appeal as an artist, I guess is what he's kind of aiming at. Looking at his YouTube, he only has 1,000 subscribers, at least on the topic one. I don't know if he has a personal YouTube channel, but this song only has 6,000 views here on YouTube. Again, I don't know if this is his personal one. Maybe he has more on Spotify, but he definitely seems to be the least well known artist we've had on the channel for this week. And I think this is just him saying that, it's a struggle to do all of this, to speak his truth. And, but he's not going to stop, right? This is his struggle to make. The chorus I've been thinking about a lot because he talks about it a lot. We have the 4 times it's said in the middle of the track, and then the 50 times it seems like it was said at the end of the track. And I'm really trying to. Maybe I got. I'm really trying to work my way around this, right? So he says, amplify brain waves to condense my thoughts. And I think this is really, really, really racking my brain here. But if we amplify something, it should make it larger, right? We amplify means to make more of. So he says he makes more brainwaves or makes his brainwaves larger to condense his thoughts. And I wonder if he's saying right here that, rap is all about the words, right? Hip hop and the art of rap is all about getting your thoughts out. And, we do see a lot of extra space to present those words in a hip hop. We've looked at a lot of rock and metal tracks going across this channel where all of the lyrics of a song would be the length of one of these guys' verses. These guys are dropping 2 to 3 times as many words per song. And some of these songs are even in the 3-4 minute range, whereas the metal songs would be 6, 7, 8 minutes and still not reach anywhere near the amount of words down here. So they don't necessarily have a problem with needing to be constrained, right? They can have a ton of words being put out in each song, but it's about how you use those words. There is this idea about being concise, right? Speaking exactly what needs to be spoken. It's why they inject 2 and 3 readings to each line. It's why they have double entendre. It's why they use metaphor. They want each line to have maximum potential, right? It's about condensing your thoughts. So I wonder if that's what he's saying here. He says, I think harder, I work harder about this, I amplify my brain waves so I can condense my thoughts into this. Otherwise, I think he's saying that he could ramble for hours, about this one topic, but he's trying to compress all of his thoughts into a 6-minute song, right? And honestly, 2 minutes of this song is the chorus, and the opening 45 seconds is an instrumental, and there was an instrumental break before the outro too. So there's really only 2.5 minutes tops for the verses to come out. Yeah, he needs to condense these things down. He does put a lot of words out there, more than most other genres, but he still needs them to be clear and concise as well, right? Like I said, if you can fit 2 or 3 meanings into a line, why take 3 lines to say it? And I think that's what he's getting here. Now, next he says, bends the dark. So his thoughts bend the dark. And this made me think about what it would mean to bend the dark. And I don't have anything, but what if we take the inverse of this? So instead of saying bend the dark, we say bend the not light. You're like, well, what does that mean, Bryan? Well, it would be the opposite of bending light, correct? And bending light is the concept, at least, I don't know if it's a real life concept, if we've reached this point of technology yet, but in a lot of sci-fi, this is where active camouflage comes in, invisibility, if you will. You actually bend the light to go around you so that your body or your clothes do not reflect it, right? So to bend the light means to hide the truth. So if we bend the dark, does that mean reveal the truth? That's, I feel like I might be grasping at straws there, right? I'm not going to say that that is a great reading of it because it requires quite a bit of turns to get to it. But I think it lines up with what he's saying earlier where he says he speaks the real stuff. He speaks truth. So to bend the dark would be to reveal that truth. He condenses his thoughts down into, oh, actually, even this works. What is the best way? Well, no, because reveal the truth is actually pretty short and condensed as well. So maybe there's a second reading of this that he's thought of as well. Maybe bending the dark means something else to him alongside with the idea of revealing truth. And then he says, why question my art? And I'm not sure who that's directed at. And I think that's making it the most difficult for me to understand what he's saying. I don't know if he's asking himself, why does he question his own art? I don't really get that vibe from the 2 other lines that I've actually figured out from here, but it could be possible that he does, question what he puts out occasionally. But it could also be directed at his critics, right? I'm out here thinking as hard as I can, putting my mind to work. I'm intelligent. I'm a wordsmith. I'm creating this amazing stuff. I'm bringing truth to light. Why are you questioning me? That kind of thing. That's kind of what I'm getting here. But how that applies to anything else I've read, like trying to take this theme of, speaking truth and applying it to the ideas in verse 1 and trying to see if I can fit some metaphors in there, like, I don't know. I don't know. I think you guys are going to have to help me on this. Let's get into verse 2 and see what's going on. Maybe I'll catch something in here. He says, shunned by rays of Amun-Ra, which is interesting because this is the second Egyptian god he's made an allusion to earlier. He spoke of Osiris. So he says, shunned by the rays of Amun-Ra. So he's no longer allowed in the light. Because I think Amun-Ra is the god of sun or daylight or something like that. He says, darkness exposes every soul's flaw. So he's forced to be in the darkness, and this darkness exposes his flaws. He says, I forever remain raw and unpolished. He never gets the chance to show the unflawed area of him. He's always in the darkness, and the darkness makes his flaws present. So he's never allowed to be a polished version of himself. Drunk off knowledge of knowing I'm dumb. That's interesting. That's interesting. Very humble. But he also speaks earlier that he speaks light to truth, right? He's this person who can see the world for what it is, and even if it appeals to no one, he's going to say it. So he definitely has that humble element where he says, I don't know everything, but I do know these things, right? That's kind of the vibe I'm getting there. He says, now remain none's sum while inner eyes stay numb. we all shall succumb. Oh, we actually do have a nice rhyme thing going on here. To eternal sleep. So he says we all fall. We're all going to die someday. For now, I'll just yawn and speak on ill gutter beats. I wonder if that's referencing the music. Gutter beats. Ill. Maybe I'm just an old 90s kid, but ill used to be like cool. Like, man, that's sick. That's so ill. Like, that's the cool stuff, right? But then the gutter beats, like, yeah, it has this beat to it, but it's also very compressed and distorted. So it's not like a clean beat, it's a dirty beat. And the gutter, I don't know, man. I don't know if I'm either getting really good at this or I'm just really grasping at straws. He says, I'll watch falling leaves, going back to the idea of the gutters, but transferring it over into this next idea, and walk on knees down graveled path, vocalize own epitaph. Epitaph. Evoke on path towards inner nonlinear, lay head amongst sinners, solitude falls winter. This is the second time he's brought up sinners and kind of religion in general. And the second time that he's kind of aligned with them. Earlier, he said that he wasn't going to go searching for an angel with broken wings. Maybe appalled by the sense of the urgency to resurrect the dead. I mean, maybe if we keep on this religious idea, especially since it's right next to the angels, and he even talks about singing hymns. I mean, the urgency to resurrect the dead, could that be, the idea of the second coming of Christ, right? He's appalled but that people continue to believe in this or push for this when there's so much going on around him that he's still trying to grapple with. I don't know. And again, like I said, it's the second time that he's said that he stays among sinners, right? So maybe he's calling out religion in a couple of these lines. But he says, I lay my head amongst sinners. So I sleep with sinners, right? They're around me. My company are those that the church would not be happy with, kind of idea. I'm appalled at visual surroundings, but I kept my bearings non-grounded. Liquid language kept frozen 40 ounces. How many MCs know who Faust is? I wonder if he's talking again about his knowledge. Because Faust is, it's an old story about a man who... I don't know if I should go in there because I'm kind of second guessing. It's been a long time since I read Faust. But I think it was a man who replaced himself with machinery or something. Maybe I'm thinking of something else, though. I don't know. We're going to keep going. Anyways, he's saying, how many people who, are into music, who are MCs, as he says, who are, have kept up with reading, right? Especially reading old texts. And it's not the first time that he's spoken about, being able to having the knowledge, I suppose is a way to say. He goes, pardon original, manuscript fit, text type, tailored suit. Oh, something about this section I want to talk about was that I think it was this exact point. And first of all, I tried to say that. It's very difficult for me to say. Manuscript fit, text type, tailored suit, felt effects at root through vein type, heron you shoot. That's a tongue twister for me. Like that, it's very difficult for me to make that flow. And thinking back and the way that it just worked, kind of phenomenal. I don't know how he did that. I don't know if he slurred past the T's, maybe softened them up and turned into something closer to a D sound. But for me to actually emphasize the T as I normally would in things like text or type, it makes it very stuttery, very very sharp attacks there. It does not flow out of my mouth, that is for sure. But anyways, in this section, instead of forward vocals, right, we had panned left and right, and they're sort of call and response, but they were also pushed into the mix, very not hip hop, right? Hip hop is about the lyrics, the vocals sitting above the music. The music is there to support the vocal work. And well, wouldn't you know, there's another genre. Wouldn't you know? There's another genre that's pushes the vocals into the mix in order to create an atmosphere rather than emphasize the lyrics themselves, and that would just happen to be black metal. I don't know how I keep coming to this point where I correlate this hip hop song to black metal, but it cannot be by chance. It feels to me that, at least on some level, Dalek is familiar with, or maybe has an appreciation or even love of black metal. I suppose it could be completely coincidental, but it just seems like there's too many pieces that fit, that it seems like that it could just be a series of events that happen to come together in a single song, and instead it feels like a very intentional way to craft the music around these words. But I also think it's interesting because, like I said, it's not very hip hop at all. We haven't heard anything like this week. If the lyrics weren't in front of me when I was listening to it, I don't know that I would have picked up on any of it. First of all, the call and response is rapid fire, sometimes even overlapping. The message gets lost easily. But because it's pushed into the mix and it's compressed a bit more and the volume gets dropped a little bit, it's really difficult, I think, for the message to come across to even seasoned hip hop listeners. And but it makes it, when it comes back together at the end and unifies it, it makes that final line even stronger. And I wonder if there's going to be an idea of, I don't know. Let's dig into these lyrics and see what's going on. It says, pardon original, manuscript fit text type tailored suit, felt effects at root through vein type heron you shoot. Euphoric, saw banks of Tigris and Euphrates, fertile crescent hold more lessons than taught by deities. Tigris and Euphrates, I can't remember. It's a mythology, but I can't remember what culture it comes from. It kind of makes me think that possibly. Well, no, it's not. It's not. I'm pretty sure it's not Egyptian. Because I was going to say we can go along with the idea of bringing up Ra and Osiris, but I really don't think it was Egyptian. I don't know. You guys can hit me up with that. But then he even comes back later and says that we hold more lessons than taught by deities, bringing in the idea of gods again, right? Although Fertile Crescent is capitalized, he says the Fertile Crescent hold more lessons than taught by deities. I don't know what that alludes to. Fertile might just be capital because it's the beginning of the line, but Crescent has no reason to be capital unless it's a proper noun, and I don't know what it's referring to. Consciousness is leaving me, seeing that same sage turn page on habitual, perform tectonic rituals, broke abacus to calculate coordinates, but can't afford rent. It makes no sense. What I'm kind of getting here is that he's seen people look through books and take in knowledge, and those same people have used tools. He broke the abacus to calculate coordinates. They've used tools to overcome hardships, right? And despite all of this intelligence and getting past hurdles, seeing hardships put in front of them and getting past them, they're struggling, but they're making it through. They still can't afford their rent. These are people who are not lazy. They are striving and struggling, and working as hard as they can every day, and they still can't afford rent. He says it makes no sense. Right? These are not, maybe he's calling out specifically the propaganda that the only people who can't pay rent are the lazy ones. They're not out getting jobs, or they're not hard working at their jobs or whatever. And he says it makes no sense that I've seen these people work so hard and they still can't make ends meet. He says, forgot our days in shackles? You're concentrating on battles? I lecture graduates discussing Kant till they leave baffled. So again, he brings in his intelligence into this. He says, you might have forgotten about the old days, but I'm here to remind you of this information. And then the chorus comes back in, amplified brainwaves to condense my thought. And one thing I really like here is that we have the calm rapping style here. We do it a few times, and then we have our instrumental fade out into the fade in, and then it comes back with the heavy outro where it feels like he's screaming this part, right? And it almost feels like a declaration of worth, where, you know, this is all his truth, right? And he feels like maybe he's still not being seen for who he is. He says he's not perfect. He says he's humble, but this is still what he's seen around him. He's trying to shed light to these truths that he feels like nobody is listening to. And rapping about it doesn't work anymore. There's one part where he even says, I don't seem to appeal to anybody with the things that I'm talking about, the way I'm talking about them. So here at the end, it feels more desperate. He starts yelling. There's volume and intensity to his vocals that is amplified by the compression he puts on top of it, right? It's very close to my ears to something that would be akin to a metal harsh vocal, a way to add intensity and presence and import to specific words or specific phrases. He wants these things to be heard. He says, I put my heart and soul into this. I'm amplifying my brain waves. I'm putting the work and I'm condensing my thought. I'm telling you guys the truth. Why are you questioning what I'm doing? Just listen to it. Understand what's going on. That's the kind of vibe I'm getting here. Again, I missed a lot of nuance here, and the first verse is still kind of going a bit over my head. And like I said, if you guys can help me at all with this one, I'd greatly appreciate it. But those are my thoughts and what I picked up on my first listen of dälek's Classical Homicide. This is where you guys come in. Hit me up in the comments. Let me know what you thought of this one. Let me know if you enjoyed it, if you didn't really like it, if you picked up on anything I didn't, if you think I was right. If you have any interviews with the dude and maybe he can shed some light on his authorial intent with the lyrics or even the music behind it, let me know. Hit me up with this stuff. Above the comment section is a description box, and in there is a link for Linktree. Okay, in there is a link for Linktree. It'll take you to this menu right here. It has everything related to the channel in it. You can find merch. You can follow me on Twitter. You can join the Discord server. You can join the Patreon and vote on future themes and songs. Just a bunch of stuff in there. Go ahead and check it out. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. All right, that wraps it out. That wraps it up for this one. We have a creator request came out 14 minutes ago where a band gets in contact with me, usually a smaller band, and says, hey, can you help us out? Give us your thoughts on this. Do a little bit of, promotion. We're trying to get our songs out, that kind of deal. And I'm like, yeah, I love listening to up and coming music. I really do, especially from smaller bands. You get to see what's on the horizon before it hits the radios because, a lot of these bands are really good. It's just it's a matter of time, putting in the work, promoting themselves, getting their music out. So, it's kind of like a sneak peek to the future. Yeah, ever think about it that way? I haven't thought about it that way before, but it's pretty neat. All right, well, until next time, remember to be critical but not cynical of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening whenever you choose to watch my videos.